Have you ever felt like you're alive, but not truly present? You go to work, eat, talk, laugh, but something inside feels hollow, as if something essential was left behind somewhere, but you can't quite remember where. It's not dramatic, not even clear, just a quiet ache, like a hunger that never got a name. Every day you keep going, still appears okay, but some nights, when the city is asleep and your phone has nothing new, you feel like you're drifting through your life instead of living it. There's a suitcase you've been carrying for a long time. Inside are things that once made your heart race. A song you never wrote, a trip you never took, a version of yourself you once believed you could become. You still remember, but you don't open it anymore. At first you said, "I'm waiting for the right time." Then you forgot. Then it became a habit. And now it's just another quiet decoration, just like you. But if you're still hearing these words, maybe you haven't truly given up. And in this video, you'll begin to see, why do you keep postponing things, even when you truly want to live right? But more than that, you'll finally see that maybe you're not lazy, not weak. You're just carrying an invisible mechanism no one ever named. And for the first time, you'll stop blaming yourself for it. You don't quite remember when you began to lose yourself. Maybe it was the time you forced a smile after being belittled and didn't say a word. Maybe it was when you took a temporary job and stayed for 5 years. Maybe it was when you said yes while your throat was full of silent no's. Little by little, you became good at enduring, good at not letting anyone down, good at showing up at the right time, in the right role, performing the right function. The only problem is, you stopped showing up in your own life. You still reply to messages, still see your friends, still make plans. But every action echoes with an emptiness trailing behind it, as if you're living on borrowed breath, but have forgotten how to give it back. Each morning, you wake up as if summoned, like someone called to duty, unsure why, unsure until when. There's a garden behind your house, where you once planted something just for yourself. You let it wither, not because you didn't care, but because you turned away just for a moment and never came back. You once set an alarm for something you were genuinely excited about, but you've snoozed it so many times that now, even when it rings, you don't hear it anymore. Everything you're postponing isn't just a plan. It's life inside you. And here's what no one ever told you. Every time you put yourself on hold, you're digging a little deeper into the grave where your most alive parts are being buried. You didn't choose this, but it's become a habit, so familiar now that you're afraid of your light, afraid that if you live truthfully, everything will collapse, afraid that if you speak honestly, you'll be left behind, afraid that if you walk away, no one will try to hold you back. But the scariest part isn't what you might lose. It's that if you keep living this way, you'll stop feeling like you've lost anything at all, because you've stopped expecting. And that is the quietest kind of death a person can endure, when they're still breathing but no longer dreaming. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Not everyone is afraid of living the wrong life, but nearly everyone is living according to something they can't name. You didn't exactly choose this life. It simply took shape around you. Layer by layer. Other people's expectations, childhood conditioning, the praise you once received for sacrificing yourself. And so, you grew up as if someone had pre-programmed you. But Jung didn't leave us room to blame the past. He wasn't focused on what others did to you. He was more concerned with asking, what have you done with yourself since then? And if you were to stop, without justifying, without painting over the truth, you would see something cold, Someone else has been living your life for a very long time. A shadow, an old voice, an accepted version, but not you. That shadow isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's deeply moral. It teaches you how to be kind, how not to be a burden, how to be responsible. But it also teaches you how to quietly disappear. Jung called this the persona, the social mask you must wear to survive. But when it stops being a tool and becomes your entire identity, you no longer know who you are once it's removed. And that's when you begin to live on repeat, doing everything right, but feeling nothing. Fulfilling every role, but no longer having a voice of your own. People look at you and see an adult. But if you pause, you'll notice there's a child inside you who never got to grow in their way. That child doesn't need someone to fix things. It just needs to be believed, to be asked, to be heard. But you've been too busy living the stable version of yourself for so long, you can't hear it anymore. Jung didn't teach us to become someone else. He taught us to stop performing, to stop straining to fit an image, and to ask the one question only you can answer. Who, exactly, is the one living inside you now? There's a kind of man who appears free. He rejects commitment, avoids structure, and resists settling down. He speaks of art, of spirit, of truth. He carries the gaze of someone who's once touched something profound. But if you look closer, he's stuck, caught in the shadow of something that's never been named. A mother who never let go of his unconscious. Carl Jung called this the Great Mother. Not merely the biological mother, but a deep-rooted archetype within the soul. The place where you were once held, forgiven, unconditionally coddled, where you didn't have to earn love. But if that image never dissolves, you never truly grow up, because you'll spend your life trying to return to that feeling, in love, in work, in spirit. You'll seek relationships where you're understood without ever having to face yourself. You'll start many things, then abandon them, because no one's holding you accountable. And, deeper still, you'll delay every real transformation, as if waiting for someone to give final approval, to permit you to be yourself. But that person never arrives, because they've never existed outside the psychological shadow you carry. This is the invisible delay zone, where you say later to everything that matters, where you live in preparation instead of action, where you're a child who knows exactly what he wants, but stays still for fear of disappointing mother. Mother, here, is symbolic. She represents the gentleness that made you fragile, the protection that made you forget. To truly live, you must leave the place that once nurtured you. Jung called this the cutting of the psychological umbilical cord. Not everyone dares to do it, because it hurts, because it leaves you alone, because it deprives you of the comfort of being understood. But if you don't cut that cord, you'll remain a child inside a grown body, always waiting to be rescued, always afraid of being fully seen. And so, every time the world grows harsh, you'll retreat. Every time someone places a demand, you'll withdraw. Every time a threshold appears, you'll hear the lullaby echo, "You don't have to go yet, my child," and you'll pause again. But Jung says, this is precisely the moment you must cross. Not to betray the one who loved you, but to begin loving yourself by no longer hiding inside someone else's love. The house you once lived in, not made of bricks, but of dreams and an inner voice, now resembles an abandoned storage room. The windows are sealed. Curtains are heavy with dust. On the wall still hangs an old map, scribbled with messy notes. Places I once wanted to go. In the far right corner sits a wooden desk. On it lie unfinished manuscripts. A song that never made it past the opening verse. A love confession never sent. A plan that bears your name, but is missing your signature. You still pass by this room every day, but you don't look inside, as if an invisible rule has been written. Do not remember. Behind the house, there's a small courtyard, once bathed in golden afternoon light. Now it's overrun with weeds, and in the center of the yard, there's a well. You used to stand at the edge of that well many times, about to call something up, but each time you stopped, as if the well was too deep, as if you weren't sure whether you had the right to name the things you truly wanted. So you turned away, not running, just quietly closing the door, sealing everything as if it never existed. People ask you, "Why are you so quiet lately?" You smile and say, "I'm fine." But the truth is, you're living beside your own life, like a tenant in a house that bears your name, but too afraid to step into your room. And at night, when the city has fallen asleep, there's a fleeting moment when you stand in front of the mirror, place your hand over your chest, and feel yourself fading. Just a little. No one else sees it, but you do. You know. You know it's time to open that door again. Not to fix anything, not to finish anything. Just to be there. Just to step in and say to yourself, "I'm still here." Because if you can still touch that well, maybe this time, what rises won't be another dream, but a real life, waiting for you to turn the light back on. You're not short on time. You're using it to avoid the one thing that matters most. You're not lacking energy. You're spending it convincing yourself that it's not the right time yet. But no one has ever been truly ready. No one stands before life and hears a voice over the loudspeaker saying, "Now you're good enough, go." What are you waiting for? It doesn't exist. The perfect moment, it won't come. The perfect companion, they won't appear. The perfect environment, it isn't real. The perfect permission, no one's handing it to you. You're using reasons to justify your fear. You say, "I need to learn more." But really, you're afraid of being criticized. You say, "I'm waiting until I'm financially stable." But really, you're afraid you're not enough to pursue what you truly want. You say, "I'm waiting for motivation." But in truth, you've lived so long disconnected, you can't even hear your inner voice anymore. Your procrastination is no longer harmless. It has become a system. It wears the clothes of logic. It walks in the shoes of responsibility. It sits beside you each morning whispering, "Not today." And you listen. One more day, then another, then a year, then 10. And you look back, only to find yourself standing in the same place, with unfinished drafts, unsaid words, and all the moments you turned away. And the scariest part is, you start getting used to it. So used to it, you begin to believe you weren't meant to live fully. That's enough to stay still, to stay afloat, to not fall apart. But you're wrong. You weren't born to live halfway. You're not background software for someone else's life. You don't need anyone to nod before you can live truthfully. The final question isn't, "Are the conditions right yet?" It's, "What will you choose when no one's watching anymore?" And if you still can't choose, then you'll have to accept one thing. No one is stopping you from living fully, except you. No one ever really knows when transformation begins. It doesn't come with stage lights. There's no applause, no soaring soundtrack. It usually begins on a very quiet night, when you're about to turn off your phone, but don't. When you're about to walk away from a tense conversation, but stay. When you're about to say, "It's fine," But this time, you admit, I'm tired. No one asked you to stay. No one required your honesty. But you stayed, not because you're strong, but because you're exhausted. Exhausted from walking away. Exhausted from holding it together. Exhausted from living so long in a life where you no longer exist. Jung once said, "Darkness doesn't go away when we run. It fades when we sit with it long enough to recognize its shape." And this is one of those moments. No need to fight. No need to fix. Just sit in the very emotion you've been avoiding. Just look at the thing you always rush past. No need to explain. No need to rationalize. Just say it. I'm still here. This action isn't loud, but it breaks a pattern hardwired into you for years. You don't need to change everything. You just need to stop repeating. Stop retreating from yourself every time something feels uncomfortable. Stop living like your voice doesn't matter. A timely no, a slow yes, a second of eye contact when someone doesn't see where you are hurt. That's a ritual. No one gives it to you. But if you choose to hold it, it changes everything. Sometimes, you don't need to break through. You just need to stop leaving. Sit with the confusion, with the emptiness, with the sadness you can't name. And in the middle of that feeling, something small happens. You realize you're still alive. Clearly, even if no one sees it, even if nothing grand is happening, but it's real enough to begin again, from a place deep within you, like a small flame, unseen by others, but you know it's burning. And this time, you won't blow it out. What if no one was watching you anymore? Would you live differently? If every gaze turned away, if every expectation dissolved, what would you still hold on to? Is there something you'd keep doing, even without recognition? Is there something you'd still live for, even if no one applauded? And if the answer is no, then maybe you've been living outside of yourself for too long. Maybe you've become excellent at fulfilling expectations, but are you still living for anything that's truly yours? If tomorrow were your last day, would you have the courage to say, "I lived a life where I didn't abandon myself"? Or would you go quiet, knowing you've only just begun to wake up? Maybe what you need isn't another plan, but a moment of reckoning, a small one, but real enough to stop running. And if you're still hearing this, maybe some part of you is already ready. One day, you won't need a reason to live truthfully anymore. You won't wait for the circumstances to change. You won't feel the urge to prove to anyone that you're worthy. You'll simply live. Not as someone who's been hurt, not as someone trying to start over, but as someone who has truly begun. Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That means no life truly begins unless you dare to touch the part of yourself you've always tried to hide. The laziness, the shame, the jealousy, the doubt, the part you never wanted to admit. But that very part is where your real voice has been waiting. You don't need to overcome it all at once. You only need to stand still once and stop running. No one may notice it, but you will. True maturity begins the moment you stop justifying the old and start keeping promises to the new, even when no one is watching. It's a quiet kind of discipline, but powerful, because it rises from within. And when it begins, you'll realize nothing has to be rushed. Nothing has to be grand. You'll cook a meal without feeling like it's a waste of time. You'll write a sentence without needing anyone to read it. You'll sit alone without feeling something's missing, because you're no longer living to be recognized. You're living to be present. And from that space, everything you touch will carry a new quality of life. Not because you've become someone else, but because, for the first time, you're no longer trying to. You're just living, and that's the only thing you ever truly needed. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to rewrite your entire life just because today you've seen something more clearly. All you need is to sit a little longer after this video ends. Like someone who's just stepped out of the dark but hasn't rushed to turn on the light, because somewhere, something is waking up inside you. Not a reason, not even a motivation, but a fragile feeling that maybe you haven't lived in alignment with what truly matters. And if you're still here, still listening, maybe you've already started to hear it. Quiet, but real. This journey doesn't ask you to rush. There's no one waiting at the finish line, but there will be doors opening exactly when you've grown still enough to see them. And in the next video, maybe one of those doors is waiting. A new question, a new wound, a part of you you've never truly faced. You don't need to be ready. You just need to be present. We won't go fast, but we will go deep. And with each step, you'll begin to. There is another kind of life being prepared, not for someone perfect, but for someone just honest enough to begin again.